What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. A lot has changed in the last 24 hours. We now have Invest 97L currently over Haiti and the Dominican Republic. It is currently moving through the Greater Antilles, and it is no longer expected to move into the Atlantic Ocean. It is now expected to move into the eastern Gulf of Mexico in even better conditions for development than anticipated. And we now have a very big chance of development. And this system is going to start organizing as soon as it gets off the coast of Haiti right at this current point. So let's go ahead and show you the situation that we have. This system is over Hispaniola right now. As of a couple of hours ago, it was over the Haiti-Dominican Republic border. So we can go ahead and show you that right now. A well-defined tropical wave is producing a large area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms over Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, the southern Bahamas, and the adjacent waters of the southwestern Atlantic and northeastern Caribbean Sea. Development of the system should be slow to occur during the next day or so while it moves west-northwestward over portions of the Greater Antilles. However, environmental conditions are forecast to be more conducive than for development after the wave passes the Greater Antilles, and a tropical depression is likely to form this weekend or early next week over the eastern Gulf of Mexico near the Florida Peninsula. Interests in the Greater Antilles, Bahamas, and Florida should continue to monitor the progress of the system. We now have a 30% chance of formation in the next 48 hours and a 70% chance of formation in the next 7 days. And that formation area is now encompassing the western part of Cuba over here. So depending on where this system tracks, whether it is south of Cuba or whether it's just north of it, it now has that probability to develop right here, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a very big situation that's been going on, and the breaking news that we've seen over the last 24 hours and the changes we've seen over the last 24 hours are going to have big indications for who gets hit, how hard is it going to hit, are they going to get hit, and why it's going to be that way. Because what we're seeing right now is essentially with 97L, you're seeing the system organizing further south than what we were anticipating right here. And with that, there's also the steering currents of the Bermuda High that are a little bit stronger than we were originally anticipating, which is why this thing is not going on the east coast of Florida and instead moving into the west coast. And another thing I should note here is this is going to be a very slow-moving system as it approaches the Florida Panhandle or the Big Bend region. It's going to be very slow-moving, and in some models, it's forecast to stall over the eastern Gulf of Mexico and allow for that to organize and strengthen even faster and become even more powerful. And I'll get to that in just a second, but before we do, I want to go ahead and zoom out a little bit and get a kind of a central, at least a Western Atlantic viewpoint, just to give you the context of the situation. So here's what we got going on right here. 97L is organizing over Hispaniola right now. A lot of systems tend to get killed off when they move over this island right here. However, this is the one time where this is not the case. And part of the reason why is because of the Madden-Julian oscillation. The MJO has arrived in the Atlantic Ocean. It took a little while, but August 1st, today, is when it happened. It's there, and it's allowing for the system to really ramp up in terms of convection. And you can tell as a lot of convection is really fired up. Not just here, but in the Gulf of Mexico, in the Caribbean Sea, off the coast of Venezuela, right here. And yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. And this whole area right here is a key indicator of the MJO being present. It was in the eastern Eastern Pacific Ocean yesterday, and now it has approached the Western Atlantic and is going to give this system enough drive for it to intensify and develop either just south of Cuba or right as it enters the loop current. And that right there is the big concern, because this thing is not moving at a very fast rate. It's moving pretty slow for it. Let's go ahead and show you what we're looking at with 97L at this current point in time. It's not moving very fast. It's a 25 knot invest right now. The current location is 19.8 degrees west, 19.8 degrees north, 72 degrees west. Its maximum area of winds is only 60 miles. Pressure is 1,012 millibars right now. But based on every indicator we are seeing with this, it's going to be a long next 5 days or so as this thing exits off the coast of Cuba and then makes its approach towards the Florida Panhandle, the Big Bend, maybe even as far west as Mobile, Alabama. That's what we're paying attention to in regards to this. Let's go ahead and show you the track models and the intensity with this. Every single track model wants this thing to be in the Gulf of Mexico. 24 hours ago, we were expecting every single track model for it to be off the east coast of Florida. What changed? Well, several things changed. You had this system starting to develop a low-level circulation further south than anticipated. It was originally supposed to be about, I'd say, 50 miles to the north, and allow for the steering currents to pick it up and push this out off the east coast. Now, instead of this thing maybe dodging land and dodging land and staying out to sea, now it's going to be entering the Gulf and it's going to be impacting a lot of people over here. And the thing that's really concerning me is even though there's not going to, even if this thing doesn't strengthen very quickly, it's going to move slow enough to allow for heavy rainfall to fall across Florida. When I mean heavy rainfall, I mean over 15 inches of rainfall from this. That is pretty insane. And some of the models I've been seeing have been indicating maybe up to 20 inches of rain are going to fall from this, especially on the western half of Florida. That's something you don't want to hear because that really heightens your flash flooding risk. And yeah, we don't want that to happen anyway, and it's pretty concerning to say the very least. Intensity models, they're kind of all over the place at this current point. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and show you the 12Z intensity models just to kind of give you some context. The 12Z intensity models all want this to get up to a Category 2 hurricane as it approached land in the Gulf of Mexico. It's now a little more iffy. Some are calling for Cat 1, some are calling for tropical storm strength, some are still calling for Cat 2. The point I'm trying to make here is this. The models have not had a good idea of what this thing is going to do. The models have been so all over the place that we really have no clue what the hell is going to happen, according to the models. However, we can look at the conditions, we can look at this organization of the system, and we can look at kind of how much infighting's going on. There was some infighting earlier that I noticed. However, it seems that infighting is getting less and less, and it's starting to consolidate more towards the Hispaniola branch of the tropical system and less the Bahamas branch of it. That's what I'm paying attention to right here. And I think the reason the models don't have such a good grasp on this right now is primarily because of that. They're not sure where this thing is going to initialize. They're not sure where this thing's going to develop. They're still not sure what's going to happen exactly. But the track models are now showing this thing entering the Gulf of Mexico. If this thing moved and developed where it originally stayed, which was about, I'd say 50 to 60 miles to the north of where it is now, at least the center of circulation according to the NHC and Tropical Tidbits, this thing would be moving off the east coast of Florida. But because of either a relocation of the center or the formation of a new one, then at that point, pretty much a Gulf Coast impact is pretty much almost certain. So that's what we're looking at this current point, and the conditions it's going to be moving through are pretty concerning to say the very least. Let's start with the global sea surface temperatures. Where this thing is going is it's going to be entering some of the hottest waters in the Atlantic Ocean, 31 plus degrees Celsius. For those of you living in the United States, Florida, Alabama, southeastern U.S. especially, who are going to get impacted by this, that is 88 degrees Fahrenheit. That is more than enough for hurricane development. Coupled with the fact that you have low wind shear and not very much dry air, that can easily happen if the system gets its act together. But we'll get to those other two parts in just a second. But I want to emphasize this. Where it's at right now, it's surrounded by 29 to 30 degrees Celsius waters. And if it moves into the Caribbean Sea south of Cuba, it absolutely can take full advantage of those 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degree Fahrenheit waters. That is why I'm so concerned about this. If this thing kept going where it was going and kind of stayed off the shore and stayed kind of east of Florida, I wouldn't be so worried right now. But now, with considering the fact that this thing is pretty much either just off the coast of or over Hispaniola, and now entering the Gulf, expected to enter the Gulf of Mexico, that's pretty concerning. Because a Gulf impact, at least in the last few years, has been pretty significant almost every single time. And especially at this time of year with the hurricane season. So that's why I'm emphasizing the global sea surface temperatures. It's going to be, I know I'm repeating myself with this, but I need to say this once again. These are the warmest waters in the Atlantic Ocean. Not just that, this has some of the best ocean heat content values, some of the highest ocean heat content values of the Atlantic Ocean. Where this system is expected to move is either just east of or in the loop current. The loop current is notorious for rapid strengthening, especially when you see 175 OHC values across a lot of these regions over here. If this thing enters the Caribbean Sea, like some of the models have been anticipating, we can show you the tracks right here. So a lot of them keep it just south of Cuba. Where's the OHC there? It's over 125 and around 150 OHC. Even though this is just around land, it's going to allow for this system to really organize. And we could see a probability where the system organizes before it makes landfall in Cuba at the western part of it. If that happens and we see a tropical depression right then and there, and then you start to see a little bit of strengthening with that, it's going to be a wild next few days afterward. And that's all I can say about it. Regardless, though, nothing is set in stone. You need to pay attention to this. And I know I'm sounding a little alarmist right here, but the reason I am is because this has big potential. We saw what happened with Beryl earlier this year, back in late June and early July. We saw this thing go from a tropical storm to a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm to a Category 4 hurricane in 24 hours. We saw this thing become annular and strengthen up to Cat 5. And that was in June and July. It's August now. Prime hurricane season is just about to start, and this is the first wave. That's what we're taking a look at. Wind shear, very good for tropical development. Not just in the Gulf of Mexico, but pretty much on its entire journey there. It's going to be moving just north enough of this wind shear area right here in the Caribbean Sea that it's going to end up allowing for it to potentially take full advantage of that. Where it's at right now, it's in an area of about 10 knots of wind shear. Where it's going to be heading towards is an area of around 5 to 10 knots of wind shear in the Caribbean. And it's going to stay about the same all the way until it gets to land. These are some of the best conditions that early August has to offer for a tropical wave like this. Now, there are still a few unknowns. Can this thing organize in time? Will this thing take full advantage? Will there be too much infighting? That we're going to have to see, and we're going to have to let it play out. But I will tell you this, if we start seeing quick organization on satellite, quick development with this system before it makes landfall in western Cuba, I can give you about a 75% probability that this thing is going to be a hurricane. I know this sounds alarmist, and I know it sounds like I'm hyping this thing up, but I have to look at the conditions that this thing has, and I have to say it's definitely a possibility now. Before, there was some iffiness here and there if it was going to happen. Now it's not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed in weather, but it's a lot more likely now than it was 24 hours ago. So that's what we're looking at with that. Let's go ahead and show you the dry air aspect of it, mainly because I want to also emphasize one other thing. There is a lot of moist air in the Gulf of Mexico right now, mainly because there's been a ton of convection firing up thanks to the Madden-Julian oscillations ramping up of the area. Let's go ahead and show you what it was like for the last 30 frames, because you're seeing a ton of convection firing up, and no, that convection isn't going to cool the warm waters, unfortunately. It's too mesoscale for that to happen. If you're wondering what I mean by too mesoscale, I mean it's too small for it to really make a dent in the sea surface temperatures, let alone the ocean heat content. It's not going to be producing enough upwelling for that to happen. But what this is going to end up doing is it's going to continue moistening up the atmosphere in the Gulf of Mexico, and you're seeing a moistening up the atmosphere in the Caribbean Sea where this system is expected to go now. That's courtesy of the Madden-Julian oscillation, folks. What the MJO does is it fires up a ton of convection across a lot of regions, and this gave it a very big welcome today. So that's what we're paying attention to. Let's go ahead and quickly show you the shear and the moisture forecast for the next few days as the system approaches land. So let's go ahead and show you the shear and moisture forecast. Right here, the shear is expected to completely collapse even further as the system starts to approach, and look at this. Yes, there is quote-unquote shear over here, but that can be attributed to the outflow of the system. There is nothing stopping the system shear-wise as this thing moves into the Gulf of Mexico. Let's check moisture-wise just to see what there's going to be. Yeah, there's nothing stopping this moisture-wise, because the only way dry air can work can kill off a hurricane is if wind shear allows dry air to get into the core of it. That's evidently not going to happen anymore. If this thing stayed out into the Atlantic, there was a much better chance of that happening. But now, also considering the fact that we're seeing the MJO really firing up a ton of convection across the Gulf of Mexico, this thing has the potential to go haywire in the conditions it's offered. So this is all stuff we're going to have to pay attention to, and we have hurricane models that are showing this signs of what may come at this current point. Let's go ahead and start with the HMON on Invest 97L. We're going to go ahead and show you the 10-meter winds just to give you some context in regards to this. This thing moves off Hispaniola and moves into the Caribbean Sea and starts to organize right after it makes a landfall in Cuba. Starts to organize as it approaches a land and near the Florida right here. And this thing makes landfall as a tropical storm. But again, because of all the uncertainty, because of all the changes, all the models haven't been able to have a good grasp on this system. Some of them, like I've said, including the GFS, have this thing stalling just offshore and strengthening even further before making landfall. Like, there's so much inconsistency with the models. I probably shouldn't be showing you this, but I'm going to anyway just for transparency's sake, because the message I want to get across to you is you need to prepare for anything. And here's the HAVS A starting to organize and develop. Okay, the HAVS A really is, I don't know what it's doing with this, but it's clearly having some initialization issues. HAVS B, we can go ahead and show you that as well. Yeah, the HAVS B is also having some initialization issues until it gets to the Gulf of Mexico, where it starts to organize and get up to potentially hurricane strength as it approaches the Florida Peninsula, but then it stalls just offshore and makes landfall as a Cat 1. Let's go ahead and lastly show you the HWRF model right here. The HWRF's been pretty interesting to take a look at right here. We can go ahead and show you that, because a lot of these models have been having some initialization issues, but as the HWRF enters the Gulf of Mexico, it starts to rapidly organize and rapidly intensify up to either a high-end Category 1 or low-end Category 2 hurricane as it makes landfall near Apalachicola Bay. So ultimately, what I can tell you right now, based on all of this, is nothing is set in stone. The models are having such a inconsistent grasp with it that they can't even predict what's going to happen for right now. 24 hours down the road, there's going to be a different story, and we're going to have a better idea of what's going to happen. But for now, you need to be watching this very closely, and I will absolutely keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us make more videos like these. The goal of this channel, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. Be sure to join my Patreon to become a friend of Pat or an official sponsor. Shout out to Taniel for being our official sponsor for today's video. He's been really helping me out with this. If you would like to join him, be sure to join the Patreon. Link is it's the first link in the description. If you want to come hang out with us at Storms United, be sure to join our Discord server. We are talking a lot of Tropics in regards to 97L in there, so be sure you come join us. Link to that, folks, is right over there. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.